guess one of my worst days was meeting friends for lunch. And after lunch, when we were leaving, I got up and reached over to get my coat and urinated all over the restaurant seat and the floor because my diaper was overflowed. And it's something I won't ever forget.
Probably the toughest single day in the entire experience, there were probably several, but one of them was probably telling my kids, my children, what the diagnosis was and what the outlook was. That would be probably the worst of the moments.
One of the toughest moments prior to finding out about the disease, I think, is the fact that you don't know anything about it when you have no previous experience with it.
The most challenging was dealing with the catheter, no question about that. That was the one thing that I found, as I said earlier, very uncomfortable. And I had to wear it for about 3 weeks, 22 days to be exact. So I found that a challenge because it restricted my movement for walking. And it also restricted me for sitting down. I found it was always very uncomfortable sitting down. So it was either lying down or standing up was my two choices. So from that respect, there was a restriction.
I think the most challenging moment for me was having to tell my mother that I'd been diagnosed with cancer. She'd lost 2 sisters-in-law over the years, early in their life because of cancer, and a sister in her 20s because of cancer.
The worst day or the worst experience that I've had when I was diagnosed would likely actually be the first day I was diagnosed. Because first of all, I wasn't prepared, although I don't think any man is ever really prepared for it. But I wasn't prepared at all because I believed that I was going to walk through this with no problem, that I'm cancer-free or the cancer cells have not been detected. That was not the case. So hence, when I was diagnosed, and it's strictly myself, and there was no one else other than myself and the urologist, I was diagnosed actually in Guelph. So I had then to drive back from Guelph to Waterloo, and hence, on my way back on Highway number 7, I had to pull over and I had to collect myself because I had the tears that were just rolling down my face. I was completely out of control. I had to sit at the side of the highway for approximately 25 minutes to collect myself. It was not a nice time for me.
I actually had to get my life in order. So I went and got my will updated. I got my living will updated. I got my power of attorney updated. All my insurance was in place. I had to make sure everything, my house literally was in order. Should anything go wrong, it wasn't supposed to go wrong, 85% chance of success and 90% chance. So I felt the odds were in my favor, but just in case, everything was in place. I also wanted to know what I would say to my wife and to my kids before I went into the operation in case I didn't come out of it. So my kids would have a compass, whether I made it or not. And I did all that. And that was coming up with what to say and how impactful it would be, and just dealing with mortality. The day of going in for the surgery was a little bit daunting, not overwhelming because I knew it was coming and I was prepared.
I'll tell you an interesting story. We were on our way to Princess Margaret Hospital, and the GO train, it was a sleety kind of day. The GO train pulled into the station in, I think it was not Clarkson, but I'd looked at this pub out the window of the GO train for years. It was the Blue Goose Tavern, and this is when I was still drinking beer. And I said to Barb, one day we should get off the GO train and go to that pub. And the GO train pulled out of the station, went into Toronto. I went and had my diagnosis, or this is the pre-treatment. They were telling us what we were going to do, and I knew I was going for treatment, and it was going to be 30 days of radiation. And I said to her, oh well, I guess that's, it was kind of a down day, I guess, I'm going in for treatment. But in a way, finding out you're going for treatment's a good thing because at least you're making progress. And on the way home, the GO train stopped in front of the Blue Goose Tavern. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and we got off the train. And we went into the Blue Goose Tavern and we had a jug of beer and a basket of wings, and we took a taxi home to Oakville. And that's how I dealt with that day. And it was, whenever I pass the Blue Goose Tavern now on the GO train, I smile and I say, you know what, that was a bad day, but now I've got a smile on my face. So I don't know, sometimes you have bad days. You'll have them anyway. I mean, people who don't have cancer have bad days. When you have cancer, sure, you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror and you'll say, how much longer am I going to be looking at that guy? And, well, all I can say is 5 years later, I'm still looking at him. I look a little older, a little grayer, but still here.
Well, I think probably the happiest day was because I'd been told I only had 5 years to live, getting to see my grandson and my granddaughter being born, and being able to enjoy my granddaughter for the last 5 years.
Probably when the incontinence stopped and I was able to go out without having to wear a pad and that sort of stuff.
3 days after I got home from the hospital after the surgery, my wife and I wandered down to the end of my street to watch the runners go by, the marathon runners go by. Me with big salty tears running down my cheeks, but also knowing that I now had an incentive to do something in the future. So once I got back to physical activity, and after the 6-week layoff period, I started training again, and in October of that year I ran a half marathon.
One of the best times and one of the best days, I guess, in the process was when I went to the cancer clinic for the last time, or my last visit there, with my last check-in and also the results of it. I was told, we will see you in a year. I was smiling.
And you go in, you wait in the waiting room, and you go in, and there's the little, you want to go and cheat and look at the folder that's stuck in the little catcher outside the office, and you're sitting there kind of biting your nails and fidgeting, and then Charles comes in and he looks at it and he goes, congratulations, it's 0, that's 5 years. And I said, Charles, can I hug you? He said, all right.
A series of good days were meeting with medical professionals who were able to give me a lot of information. I met with 4 urologist oncologists and 1 radiation oncologist or radiology oncologist. So I had a real broad perspective from them, and I got a lot of really positive information and positive reinforcement, if you will, from those people. Another extraordinarily positive event for me was completing that first half marathon in October, 4 or 5 months after I had surgery. That was a tremendous feeling. My family all came down to meet me at the finish line.
Waking up out of the surgery and seeing I was alive, great. Just being able to have all the apparatus, the catheter, the staples, everything was gone. I wasn't taking any more pills or anything. Everything was fine. I was walking. I had to walk, and I was walking by myself. Actually, I was walking with my dad, and it was the middle of winter. It was a snowy day, and I'm just walking slow. So here's my father in his 70s, and here I am, 40, and I'm walking like an old man, and he's walking with me and keeping me steady. So it was kind of interesting, and it was just one of those days where we looked at each other, and it wasn't really said, but he was glad that I was there, and I was glad he was there. No one said anything, but we were just walking around a block around the house, and it was just a day that I hope to have more with him, and I hope to have those days with my son, where everything is just right in the universe, and you know that you're going to be okay.
Well, I'll tell you the most amazing moment for me in this whole journey was after we had our press conference. We went home that night, and we were absorbing all this news, and we were saying to ourselves, this is pretty rough, But I said, Olivia, I'm actually feeling this immense feeling of joy. I don't know where this is coming from. It makes no sense. Completely counterintuitive. And, but that's how I'm feeling. And maybe it's just that I've had this amazing life, and you know, it's been filled with so many blessings of every kind, every imaginable kind. And I'd been, you know, recently a grandfather, and you know, I had the joys of my little Beatrice, and I thought about that rather than the possibility I might lose being around for her whole life and her wedding and her kids. I was feeling very joyful was the only word I could come to describe it. I didn't know why until the next morning, when we started reading the emails and getting the phone messages from people, and then the cards and the handwritten notes were coming in, and the people who were praying for me, the First Nations who were having sweat lodges for me, the Hindu temples, my local mosque on that Friday had a special prayer. Cathedrals, churches, the ones from the 60s who said they were sending me good vibes. And I realized what was happening that Thursday night was that people were thinking of me and sending me those positive vibes and praying for me. Well, that's where the joy came from. I have no doubt about it. And so, you know, I always had, I guess, a modest belief in prayer as a reflective tool in our life. You know, I wasn't an avid believer in some of the powers of prayer, and probably had a little bit of skepticism about some of the claims, but no more. And now, you know, everywhere I go, people are giving me hugs. They're looking me in the eye and saying, "Well, how are you doing? We're really hoping that things are going well for you."